I was going to cover this story when it first kicked off, but I was told to leave it alone because nobody was arrested at that time. You know, the story just came out. You know, suspects was wanted. People was, you know, the federal government was looking. So I stayed out of it, you know. I ain't trying, you know, bring unnecessary heat to nobody. But as the case progressed, people got arrested. And at that time, I just fell back from it. But now, guilty pleas has been given out. And there's a lot of questions, y'all, about one person in particular. And that's ZONE18 Will. Now, if you don't know who ZONE18 Will is, he's from out East Baltimore. And he's a rapper. And, you know, pretty good rapper, I would say. Check him out. Yo, 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 what it is, people, we is back. Another day on Keep It G News. And they're always in Baltimore City to talk about a crime that happened in Queens, New York in 2024. Now, I was going to cover this crime when it first happened, but I was told leave it alone because people would still want to run. Nobody was apprehended, but the story was out. So I fell back from it. Fell back so far from it that I never even reported on it. But now we got some new information because integrity is in question right now because plea deals was given. And a post surfaced yesterday saying that ZONE18 Will was a rat. Now, if you don't know who ZONE18 Will is and you're not from Baltimore, you're just not familiar with Baltimore rap scene, let me introduce y'all to him.
I heard them niggas linked up with the other side. Them niggas bitches, we don't care, it's gonna be homicides. Every time we swing through they block, them niggas be missing. I keep
niggas, they hate me, Glock 9 with no safety, Look for a op and we had some fun. On your ass like Temple Run. Bunny ears and ABM, we linked up so it's worth it.
and left them stiff, dead kid is a trans. Guys be bluffing, they ain't active, internet beefing, niggas be faggots. On site, better keep you a ratchet. Two back to back, got niggas panic. Bitch, we the bunnies with no flaws. Every situation we stood tall. They don't never spend Drake pop. We ain't got no piss and bluffing ass niggas set they threat. Tell Dango grab a 40, tell yeah to load them at 200 shots up on they block, we sweeping shit, we made a mess. 7.62s rip through shit, I hope that.
Now the reason why I played those clips from y'all at the beginning, y'all, because I wanted to take y'all to the crime scene so y'all could see what was going on, and I wanted y'all to get, you know, the bases around the story. You know, 3 Baltimore guys at the time was wanted for a murder that happened in Queens, New York, in which a guy was murdered in a U-Haul filled with weed. Filled with weed. That was a crazy story. But y'all see who ZONE18 Will is. He's a rapper from East Baltimore. Like I said, he's a pretty good rapper. You know, some of them songs that he rapped, I didn't even know that was him. He been rapping for a very long time, since he was a little younger, maybe about 7-8 years now. But this is not why we here. You know, why we here is because, like I said at the beginning, integrity is being in question. Because you see they got arrested. You see they got indicted. But now plea deals is given out. So what happened yesterday was a page, I think it's called 1500 Self-Made. Follow me out of nowhere. You feel me? Follow me out of nowhere. More than likely he wanted me to get this story. And came out with some wild claims. Basically saying that ZONE18 Will was a rat. Now, in these screenshots that I'm ready to show y'all, it details that initially everybody pled not guilty to this crime. Then it goes on to show statements that was made during ZONE18 Will plea hearing. I think his name is William Barnett. during this plea hearing, and people know how plea hearings go, you got to admit to certain elements of the crime. Now, some people say you're only supposed to admit the things that you do. Yeah, you can carry it that way, but that's not how typically plea deals work. But there's nothing wrong with taking a plea deal and admitting to crimes if everybody is on board with this plea agreement. But in this case, it don't look like everybody was on board. And if you listen to the plea, or if you read the plea agreement, if you read the plea agreement that William Barnett had to admit to, he admitted to crimes that other people committed. He admitted that it was a shooting that took place. He admitted that it wasn't done by mistake. It was an intentional shooting. And in that sense, he's implicating other people because he's not the shooter in this situation. He's not the shooter in this situation. But before I get too far into this, I showed y'all the story. Y'all know who ZONE18 Will is if you weren't familiar already. Now, listen to what actually happened and how this guy from Queens, so they called a marijuana dealer, ended up dead. Defendant Marcus Pittman is the sixth and final defendant convicted. Earlier today, in federal court in Brooklyn, Marcus Pittman, also known as Nacho and Cheese, pleaded guilty to discharging a firearm and causing a death through the use of a firearm in connection with the kidnapping, robbery, and murder of a marijuana dealer on July 25, 2024. When sentenced, he faces a mandatory minimum of 10 years imprisonment and up to life in prison. Today, the defendant pleaded guilty to an execution-style drug-related killing carried out in the rear of a U-Haul van in brutal fashion. With 5 other defendants, Marcus Pittman orchestrated a kidnapping and armed robbery of 2 local marijuana dealers before executing a restrained captive in the back of a U-Haul. According to court filings and statements by the defendants at the guilty plea proceedings during the night of July 24, 2024 and into July 25, 2024, Marcus Pittman and his co-defendants carried out a violent armed robbery and kidnapping plot that resulted in the defendant shooting and killing John Doe 1 inside of a U-Haul van in Bayside, Queens. Specifically, Mr. Pittman and his co-defendants drove up from Maryland to New York for the purpose of robbing John Doe 1 and John Doe 2, who are both drug dealers. Once in New York, co-defendant Jerome Walters and William Barnett met with John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 at a stash house in Queens under the guise of purchasing marijuana. Moments later, Walters and Barnett pulled out their weapons and held up John Doe 1 and John Doe 2. They then brought Marcus Pittman and his brother Delonte Pittman into the stash house to assist in the robbery and kidnapping. While in the stash house, Marcus Pittman and his co-defendants restrained John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 with zip ties and forced them outside into the back of a Jeep and a U-Haul van. At the same time, Marcus Pittman and his co-defendants stole approximately 30 pounds of marijuana from the stash house. Marcus Pittman and his co-defendants drove John Doe 1 and John Doe 2, who were still restrained, through Queens at gunpoint, demanding drugs and money. Co-defendants Jalen Garrett held a gun to John Doe 2 in one of the vehicles, while Marcus Pittman held John Doe 1 at gunpoint in the back of the U-Haul van driven by Calvin Israel. Soon after, Marcus Pittman shot John Doe 1 to death in the rear compartment of the U-Haul van. After the shooting, the defendants returned to Maryland. When John Doe 1's body was later found by first responders, he still had zip ties biting one of his hands and was surrounded by bags of marijuana. Co-defendants Barnett, Delonte Pittman, Waters, Garrett, and Israel all previously pled guilty for their roles in the crimes and are awaiting sentencing. And like I told y'all, there's nothing wrong with taking plea deals. Majority cases end in plea deals. But the problem is when it comes down to plea deals, like I said before, you got to make sure everybody is on board. You can't cop out while other people still fighting. You understand? If other people are still fighting, you got to fight. If you don't fight, or if you bow down or take a plea while others are still fighting, you are considered a rat. Because now your statements can be used against me in court. And in this situation, when you look at the plea deals, and them clips that I showed y'all in the beginning when I showed y'all that they pled not guilty originally, is very misleading because, of course, they pled not guilty originally. Most people want to plead not guilty originally. But the question in this case is, as the case progressed, what actually happened? Because guilty pleas was given out. And if you notice in this situation, most of the guys, the Pittman brothers, pled guilty on the same day. Israel pled guilty not too far after. And it actually ended up being 6 guys arrested and not 3. I don't know how the other 3 got arrested. You know, we ain't dig that deep. I don't know if statements was made, you know, previously. But the question at hand is the plea deal. And did Zone 18 will ruin the case for everybody? Because when you look at the pleas and you see that everybody pled guilty, you notice there's a large gap in between the plea agreements. Zone 18 will pled guilty in January of 2025. All the rest of the guys pled guilty from October to December. And if you look at one of these guys' court docket, you can see that in May, June, July, August, this person was still trying to fight the case. And he ultimately ended up pleading out at the end of it. But that's a violation for Zone 18. Well, you can't cop out while everybody is still fighting, because not only can your statements be used against these other co-defendants, but you could also be called to testify. More than likely, you will be called to testify in this situation. So people got to question if Zone 18 will is a rat. I would say based off the paperwork, yeah. Based off the paperwork, yeah. Everybody was trying to fight. All their plea deals happened within a 2-month time frame. He copped out in January. That's not how that goes, man. Normally when plea deals are taken when this is the agreement, it's going to be similar to what you just saying from the other guys, from the Pittman brothers and Israel and Garrett. But it is what it is. This is the streets. That's why people say, do your crimes by your lonely. When you do your crimes by yourself, if you participate in criminal activity, you ain't got to worry about this, because I ain't going to say he ain't know the rules, but he definitely broke them. He definitely broke them. I think everybody knows that, yo. You can't cop out. He basically pulled the gun at y'all. You cannot take deals while everybody's still trying to fight. And in this case, we know at least one person was still fighting. One of these guys ain't plead guilty to December. They were still fighting. But it got to a point where they couldn't fight no more. Now we all got to take deals. Now we all going to get probably life in prison or 40, 50 years in the feds. But this is the streets. This is how it go. When you commit crimes with everybody, you think people solid and they end up folding. But let me know how y'all feel about this in the comments. It's another day of Keep It G News, and I'm out.